Fiona, great to see you. Thanks for coming up, taking a bit of time to come on the podcast. Appreciate that. I want to kick off with something that you said to me last time we spoke, which was about wanting to. You said, I want to break through the white dudes network. So, what do you mean by that, and why does that matter to you? And what's going on there?
Yeah, so I'd like to start with some stats to frame a picture of how white dude the investment world is. And this isn't a surprise to anyone who's been out there trying to raise money as a startup, and especially if you're a female founder. So the amount of funding that goes to women on average, so this is a global figure, it's roughly 3% of all capital goes to female founded teams. If there's a male co-founder, then 15% of all that capital globally goes to a mixed gender team. So what does that mean? It means roughly 85% at best still flows to all male teams, which is a bit of a challenge when you're in the world of women's health, because most men don't really know much about women's health. And that's the lens that I'm really speaking from. And then when we flip it and look at how many women are writing checks, and this is an institutional VC perspective, the last data I have, there's only 12% of capital allocated globally by women. So again, another choke point for capital to get to either female founders or female founded teams who are changing the world of women's health. So that is really where my comment stemmed from. And it really is driven by networks, right? And we can talk about that, I think, in a minute.
So let me ask you about those figures. I mean, what you're saying is that most capital goes to men.
Yeah.
That's basically saying. Why is that a problem? I mean, I take your point about lots of women have great ideas, and I take your point about men don't know about women's health. But what about there's lots of other sectors? I mean, just explore that for a second, then we'll come back to the women's health thing in a second. Why is that a problem more broadly, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. We have a challenge with the types of, and I think it starts almost in school and university. So if we think about finance and investing at large, I I don't have children, so hopefully there's parents out there that are helping their female children
Mm.
differently. I was fortunate enough, my dad got me to check his stocks off in the Financial Times every week, and we'd go through what's gone up, what's gone down. So I was aware of what investing was and what finance was and how companies kind of made money or didn't make money. But I don't think that's an education that's commonly provided
No.
in general, right? I think boys historically are seen to be, for no real reason, either more capable or more interested. And I do think that that's changing slowly. But what we're seeing globally today is it's still mostly men who go into investment banking, venture capital, private equity, etc. And I think that's because they are encouraged to take more of an interest in the types of subjects that lead to those kinds of careers, both in school and at university. So then on once you get into those worlds, there's a pretty tight network, right? So boys, men sharing information with other networks, be that at clubs or sports or similar. Whereas still today, I forget what the percentage is, but it's still the majority of caregiving done by women in the home. So women may not be in environments where they are talking about companies, deals. Oh, so and so's just raised such and such amount of money for their new business, and so on. Now, I do think there's opportunities, but again, we can talk about that in a moment. But I do think that's really where the initial barriers start. And then when you get into the world of VC, so you're sharing deals, and as someone who's tried to raise money for a women's health startup, what tends to happen is you'll present your proposition, investment opportunity, to a VC board. And what's happening now, because frankly, venture capital is no longer in any way adventurous, people will go to their computers, do a search for, oh, have I ever invested in any deals similar to this? Chances are in women's health, no. Okay, what do I know about women's health? Oh, well, I'm a dude, so I don't really know much. And I've had this comment, oh, I'm going to ask my wife. So maybe they go and ask their wife, and then they come back to the table, and it's you're trying to dilute the risk, right, in your investments. And the fact that they don't have any analogs for companies similar that they've invested in and had either an exit or some kind of performance or DPI out of it, they're not going to invest because it's deemed to be too risky.
Yeah. Okay. So that begs the obvious question. There's clearly a problem. There's a problem with the allocation of capital, and
Yeah,
there's a problem with the way young women are socialized to become entrepreneurs, is what you're saying, isn't it? I mean, that's
correct.
perhaps not the right phrase, but you get my point.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we, we're not helping women fulfill their potential as entrepreneurs, and we're not investing enough money in them. What do you plan to do about that? I mean, it seems to me that that's a fairly significant problem, but I
Mhm.
also don't think it's going to be a particularly easy problem to resolve. I mean, what are your thoughts on what we do about that? Let's start with the
Sure.
women entrepreneurs first, and then we'll come back to the capital bit in a second. Just how do you increase the numbers of successful women entrepreneurs then?
Yeah, so I'll speak about the UK market
Mhm.
specifically. So there are increasingly really great networks in the UK that are supporting women who have business ideas to then build a business plan, to then start a business. One of them is called Founders Rise, which is founded by Emmy Faust. And yes, it's predominantly down in London and the Southeast, but she has an amazing network and supporters, advisors, and also organizations such as the UK Business Bank, who are also helping those women understand what it takes to create a business and helping them kind of get on those first rungs of the ladder. So increasingly, there are opportunities for women to create businesses, which I think is phenomenal.
And I mean, how long will that change take? Is this something that a problem that's going to be fixed in 5 years or 50 years? I'm not. I think the founders' rights thing's great. What I'm interested in is how long is this going to take to fix?
I think it's going to take a couple of generations to fix,
Yeah.
right? I think I'm seeing founders who are in their sort of, it's a Gen Z founders, I think are more common than a millennial founder, than a Gen X founder, than a boomer founder, right? So I think there's definitely improvement. I think Gen Z is seeing the opportunity for a different way of living and a lifestyle that they want, and they want to own their own success and progression and ability to do what they want on their own terms when they want to do it. There's a couple of UK founders I can think of who are so impressive in doing that. And I also think from a capital standpoint, there's a lot of Gen Z podcasters, women who've had success early with angel investing who are educating their peers. I think the gap has been sort of that Gen X millennial cohort who are now sort of starting to learn maybe later in life, which is okay. Like the average age of a founder is still not what everyone thinks. It's not a 20 something. It's approximately, I think, 45-ish
Yeah.
to found your first company. So there's still opportunity there.
Yeah. And on the capital raising bit, you can't. I mean, we are where we are with the situation. I mean, what advice would you give to women entrepreneurs that are looking to raise that face? I mean, hostile is too strong a word, probably, but they face a difficult environment in terms of raising capital. I mean, what are your thoughts on the sorts of things that they might do a bit differently to improve the odds of them raising capital for their business? I mean, do you have any thoughts about things that they can do that will help themselves?
100%. So first, really consider if venture capital is the
Yeah.
road that you want to start traveling down. Venture capital is not for everybody.
Mm.
And I think just the way that the media frenzy talks about VC and VC this, VC that, $1 billion exits, blah, blah, blah. It's not for every business and it's not for every founder. So I think having a real conversation with yourself about what you want from a VC, I think that's the clincher of the question. It's not about what the VC wants, it has to be about what you as the founder want.
Yeah.
The second thing I would encourage frankly, any founder, no matter what gender, race, etc., really look at the angel opportunities. So there's been a huge rise in the UK and in Europe and in the US around angel networks. What does an angel investing network mean? It basically means a group of people coming together to invest in a company, basically pooling money into an SPV so that you can put more money into that company than you could as an individual. There's more angel networks for women in the UK. So this year I can think of three new networks that have started, and I'm in a bunch of different women's angel groups. The first one in the UK, or one of the largest in the UK, is Alma Angels, which I think was founded at least 5 years ago, if not more. And they spend a lot of time educating women on what it means to angel invest and also dispelling this myth that you need to be a super high net worth individual because you don't. You can write a check for £1,000, or some angel networks will take even lower checks. That's not to say that there aren't angel networks out there who are investing 50 to 100,000 checks per person, because there are. But I think we are now in this place where there's a spectrum for women to make investments, to really participate in companies. I will give an example. There's a angel network based out of the north of England called Lifted VC, and they only focus on companies that are having impact. They connect angels who are interested in those sectors. So those angels can also really be a meaningful advisor to those companies. And I think for women as an angel investor, you actually get more out of it. It's not just writing a check. You can actually contribute to the success of the company that you're invested in.
Yeah. Now, we haven't got time to get into the detail here, but what would you say to a female entrepreneur that is looking to raise from angels? I mean, just give us a flavour of the sorts of things that those female-driven angel groups look for that might be different to kind of regular angel groups, which are full of short, fat, grey-haired old blokes like me.
So I think the principles really are the same. Have you validated your business idea? So, AK is anyone paying for your
Yeah, we've
service,
got traction.
product,
Yeah.
etc. So, traction. What's your vision for the next 3 to 5 years? How do you see growth happening? I think the principles remain the same, but I think one thing that angels can help with, if you want to grow slow and steady, there is more of an appetite for that within an angel network.
Yeah. And just explain for people that don't understand the difference. I mean, explain why that's the case.
In what way?
Well, why are angels more patient than
Oh,
VC?
well, you just nailed it right there. Angels are more patient than VC, although the average length of time right now that an LP is getting from being in a investment fund is somewhere in the 7 to 10 year range. So any investment, I am not a financial advisor. This is not investment advice. But for anyone making an angel investment, you have to expect that getting a return after 5 to 10 years is a bonus. I think for angels, understanding that you can participate in the growth of an entity and support a founder to make the best of their business. Maybe you'll get a return at some point, but that really needs to be the mindset that you go in with. It can't be expecting huge returns. I was literally just on a call with another woman who is an angel investor, and we were just talking about the fact that angel investing, you are seeding growth for the future, that at the moment your investment ends up getting diluted by big VCs and you're often bought out of the cap table, which isn't really a great return on that initial investment that you're putting in. So I think for anyone considering becoming an angel investor, it's not quite gambling, but it's very similar to gambling. It can't be putting your mortgage payments into a company expecting to get a huge return. It has to be disposable cash that you may not see again.
Yeah, sure. So let's go to the other side of the coin. So what is it that we need to do or that needs to happen around the kind of investment networks that will shift the dial in terms of persuading those people to put more money into female-led businesses, into female entrepreneurs, female founders? I mean, how does the investment network need to change for that to happen? I mean, what needs to happen?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of your average, even your average angel investor network, I think somehow persuading them to be open to new sectors that maybe they haven't looked at before because the potential for returns is there. So we are starting to see some exits. And again, my expertise, right, is more in the women's health side of the space. We are starting to see exits in that space. So maybe it's private equity firms buying companies to consolidate. And I personally believe that's going to start to happen a lot more regularly through next year and the following year. There are increasing amounts being invested into women's health by institutions, mostly in the US, because we're getting to Series A stage and beyond for some of the early women's health tech companies. So I think I'm hopeful that again, showing that traction and building that's happening will get people to start to look more at the women's health sector as well.
Yeah. I mean, just to pick up one of the points you made earlier on, I mean, you said, a male VC looking at women's health won't understand it. As you said, they might go and ask their wife, perhaps. Yeah. That's another way of saying they can't assess the risk.
Correct. Yeah.
So my question is, what is it that needs to happen to enable people like that to be able to assess the risk better? How is it that you help? How do you help uh, male investors understand those businesses and what they're trying to achieve and what the risks are and whether they're likely to succeed or not? Because ultimately, what you've got to do is persuade people to put their hand in their pocket and write a check. Because VCs write checks; they're just
Absolutely.
bigger checks, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, how do you help people understand those risks better? I mean, again, I don't think there's an easy answer to that. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think in the context of women's health, it's still dispelling the myths. So I was raising money in 2 years ago, so in
Mm.
2023, so not an extensive long time ago. And regularly, the response back, mostly from the panels of male investors that I was presenting to, was, oh, well, women's health is a niche market. So I don't know how many times, or as an old client used to say, you need to tell them at least 100 times until people get it. But women account for 52% of the global
Yeah,
population.
how's that a niche market? Just explain.
So I'm not quite telling how that's a niche market. So how do we get that known? At the World Economic Forum last year, 2 years ago now almost, McKinsey presented research that showed that the economic value of investing in women's health and essentially the ripple effect that that's going to create is a $1 trillion opportunity. Again, that's not a small number. So if you can invest in women who are going to create businesses that they may not be billion-dollar businesses, but let's say a female founded business is able to sustain a workforce of 50 to 100 people continuously, right, until they decide to sell that business. Isn't that a greater sort of benefit for the economy, families, etc., than just investing in an AI unicorn? And also, I think from a women's health standpoint, as I said, 52% of the world population is women. All women will go through puberty, they'll go through a fertile moment, right, where they consider have children or not have children. Majority of women are still having children. I don't know what the stats are, but it's still most women will have at least one child. So there's pregnancy, there's post-pregnancy, and then you get to perimenopause and menopause, which every woman will go through. So those are really what I would call captive markets. So I guess it's helping institutional investors understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that it's a huge market. I mean, I think it's the opposite of a niche market. It seems to be a massive market. Um,
Yeah, I would say so too.
yeah, I don't know where that niche market thing comes from. What about? I said to somebody, maybe there need to be more women investors. Maybe that would change the investing culture by having more women investors. And I've had a couple of female entrepreneurs say to me, actually, a lot of the women investors I've had to deal with are even they're even more harder nosed than the blokes are. I mean, what's your take on changing the culture? I mean, do you think having more female investors will help shift the dial? Is it just about assessing risk, or is it about changing the culture in that world, do you think? Or is it a bit of both?
I think it's short answer, it's a bit of both, but I certainly think there's a cultural shift that needs to happen. So there's an organization that's somewhat global but based out of the UK called Unlock.vc.
Mm.
And their whole mission is to A, get more women into venture capital and institutional capital areas, to help women stay in those positions, and then to help women basically develop their own funds and continue growing that female network in VC. I think your point about women investors being harder than male investors, yes, I'm sure that people have experienced that. I think it's what we saw when women first went into the workplace and women who are on boards and often senior women, they can often, I guess, overcompensate, not wanting to be perceived to be weak. So they'll come across as strong, and all those other additional stereotypes that women in high up positions of organizations often suffer from. I think, yes, if we can get more women allocating capital who understand women's health issues, for example, in my sector, that can only be a good thing, right? The women investors who I have presented to will 100% start nodding their heads when you start to talk about anything to do with menstruation, menopause, fertility, infertility, pregnancy. Women understand those conditions that maybe men just don't have that same lens to understand.
And what about the opposite of that, as it were, women investing in all the other sectors? I mean, what's your take on how to move that forward? Because in one sense, it's the same problem. There are less women investors investing less money in all the sectors, not just focused on one thing. I mean, how do you change the culture around those things? I take your point about women understand women's health better. I
Yeah.
get that, but we don't just want women investing in that area, do we? We want a broader shift. I mean,
No,
how do you
absolutely.
bring that about?
Yeah, I think again, just getting more women into VC. And there was a report, I think it's now 2 years old, that was looked at when you have multi-gender or race teams within a VC institution, the deals and the results of those deals actually outperform an all-male investing team. And why is that? Well, I think there's an emotional EQ component, right, that women are able to bring to the table. So no matter what the sector, they're going to ask slightly different questions and they're going to potentially see things that an average male investor won't be able to see as they're doing due diligence on different companies.
And is there something in there about diversity of thought? I mean, you talk about asking different questions, but I mean, it
Yeah.
seems to me that the other thing about mixed teams is you get a much broader range. I mean, so it's not just diversity in the sense of men and women and people from ethnic minorities. I mean, I think that for me, there's something in there about diversity of thought, people approaching the kind of problem solving process from a more diverse range of perspectives. I mean, my take on it is that those things are important. I mean, would you agree with that? Have you seen that sort of stuff?
100%. I think. if the more variety of both people and experience that you can have in the room, frankly, you're going to have a better due diligence process, right? Because one person will think of questions that the other person is like, oh, I just didn't think of that because my own experience lens is completely different. So, yes, I think the more variety that you can have in a team, the better.
Yeah, and what you're saying is the better the due diligence, the lower risk the investment.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's where you flush out the problems, isn't it, in due diligence?
Ideally.
Let me ask you. I mean, you're involved with a bunch of investor networks. I mean, what is it you're trying to achieve? I mean, let's just go back to the sorts of things that you're doing. I mean, what is it you're
Yeah.
trying to achieve exactly, and how long do you think it's going to take? Are we going to be talking about this again in 10 years? What do you think?
Gosh, I hope we are, but from a positive standpoint
Yeah.
and the changes that have happened, my aim is to be connected into networks that I can then refer startups to get access to capital. That is really the goal of why I'm doing this. Will I create a fund? I'm not sure. Will I create an angel network? I think there's a lot of angel networks out there, and I personally am very impressed by all the angel networks out there, and there's more networks coming all the time. I think what the UK needs is more capital up north to support the amazing innovation that's happening up north, not just in women's health, but in everything. There's an incredible science corridor stretching from sort of Sunderland, Newcastle, coming around from Leeds and Manchester, and that goes all the way up to Glasgow. And I'm just not seeing enough investment activity happening in the north of the UK. It's all incredibly centered in London and the southeast. I don't think that's unique. I think Europe has a similar problem. In France, where I'm living at the moment, we have that challenge. Paris is everything. And that's where most of the money tends to be. But there's incredible innovation happening in the south of France. Nice has coined the Silicon Valley of France. Marseille has an amazing biotech scene and engineering scene. So there's definitely innovation. I think that for me is where angels can really help get innovation out of universities and into the commercial world.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, having lived in both Sunderland and Newcastle and Manchester, actually myself, I totally understand what you're saying. Um, my question is, what do you do about that, though? I mean, at the moment, all the debate is the kind of Oxford-Cambridge arc, seems to be hugely popular. It was hugely popular with the Tory administration. It's now hugely popular with the Labour administration. What you're saying is there's this corridor. I mean, you might previously have referred to it as perhaps the Northern Powerhouse. I don't know what the exact
Yeah, I
pronunciation.
don't know what the current name is, but
But
yeah.
what do we do about that? I mean, how do you tackle that problem of shifting people's focus to look at all the incredible stuff that's happening in the north? I mean, it's very easy to say, it's much more difficult to do. What are your thoughts about how we do that?
So, my thoughts, so maybe somewhat controversial. Do we get outside UK investors coming to invest, right? Versus letting UK investors realize that there's opportunity up north. Maybe we do bring in US investors to have locations based in the Northeast or in Scotland, right? So that they can get access to deal flow that no one else is really picking up on. That would be one way. I know Innovate UK is doing a good job of trying to allocate capital, both to the north of the UK, but then also to organizations that are having a certain number of emerging managers and female emerging managers. So we do have some policies in place, but I'm not quite sure what the magic wand is.
I don't think there is a magic wand, would be my guess. I mean, if you could fix it with a magic wand, somebody would have probably fixed it, wouldn't
One
they?
would hope, yeah.
You know, one would hope, yeah. So I think that we might be talking about that again in 10 years, perhaps. So, okay. And let me just ask you about your experiences. When we first met, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, you were the CEO of a female health tech business, and you've now
Right.
sort of transitioned into this stuff that you're doing with investors. I mean, when you look back at that journey, I mean, what have you learnt from the experience?
Gosh, I think the biggest learning is it's still challenging for female founders to raise capital. I think there are more networks now that you can access early stage capital. Like I said, there's a lot of women's angel networks out there, which is really exciting. And the other thing for me is the need to not just have money, but to have network, right? Which I still think is, we talked about this at the very beginning. Why is it that men tend to succeed more when they're either raising or building a business? And I think it's that network. And I think somehow creating earlier for women to either build businesses out of universities or whatever the sort of institution is that people are going through learning. How do we create long-term business networks, almost like alumni networks, right? If you've done an MBA, then you're going to be part of an alumni network, which is insanely powerful to connect you to the right people to build a partnership for your business or get access to get to an introduction to a different company. And I think that's something that is still not necessarily easy for women to get tapped into.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting what you say about those alumni networks. I mean, I'm a great believer that, if you want to increase your chances of success at pretty much anything, you want to surround yourself with good people. I mean, if you're
Sure.
gonna if you want to be a better skier, I mean, surround yourself and hang out with people that are good skiers. I mean, to,
Exactly.
to come back to what we were talking about earlier on. I mean, if you surround yourself with great people, in whatever situation you're in, you're going to improve your odds, aren't you? Because
Yeah,
you can
definitely.
learn from them, you can learn with them, and all the rest of it. So I think that's a really well made point. It's interesting your point about alumni networks. I mean, I don't. I mean, I've been to a number of universities, and I don't think the alumni networks have been particularly effective at all. I'm not going to say which universities because they'll start ringing me up and complaining if I do that. But I don't think the alumni networks are particularly effective. They tend to be focused on what the university needs, and will I give them a chunk of
Interesting.
money rather than using those alumni networks to bring people together. That doesn't seem to be happening. I mean, is that what you're talking about? That those alumni networks need to be more focused on bringing people together, or are you
Yeah.
saying something else?
Yeah, no, I think so. In the US, there's certainly university alumni networks and university alumni angel networks. So I was working on a startup in the US and we tapped into the Founders Alumni Network to raise some early stage seed funding. Um, People like Google as well have an alumni angel network. I know LSE in the UK has an alumni angel network. So I know they are out there. I guess it's maybe some are more active than others.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're probably right about that. I guess if it's a university that really sees the business school as a major component of what they do, then they're probably going to be more focused on that, aren't they?
Yeah, no, totally. I think one thing, so you asked, what I'm doing now. I think the easiest thing to think of it as is connecting, being a translator almost between founders, angels, and VC. So if I can sort of help connect those entities together, then that's a win, because those people don't often sit in the same room. So I was working on an accelerator project recently, and we were able to bring into the room, obviously, the startups who were in the accelerator, people who they could potentially partner with. So in this case, it was health, so big pharma, but then also investors, both angel networks and VC networks. I don't see that happening as regularly as maybe it should. So I think there's an opportunity there to create events that bring those people together. In London, it's happening a little bit. There's an organization called Nexus Connected, and the founder of that is definitely bringing people together and working closely with Barclays Business Bank so that they're putting people who need money in the room with people who have money and experts in the sector. But I do think there's opportunities for more of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let me ask you a couple of final questions just before we wind up. So, if you were to go back to the beginning, is there one thing that you would do differently knowing what you know now? If you were to go back to sort of when you started out as the CEO of a tech, I mean, what would you do differently on the basis of what you've learned?
Sure. I wish there'd been more angel networks for us to tap into, actually. I think that was possibly a miss on our part.
Mm.
I wish we had potentially been able to connect with more female funds in order to raise money.
Right. Okay. And what advice would you give to somebody starting out now? I mean, what would your advice be to somebody? What the most critical piece of advice? I know there's probably lots of things you could tell them, but what would be the one
uh,
most important thing?
Surround yourself, as you said, with experts, people who've already done it, who
Yeah.
you can ask.
Yeah.
How did you do this? What would you advise on this? Can you mentor me?
Yeah.
Because that I think is just critical for the learning, and you'll get to build something faster.
Yeah. And one final question, which is not really about you and the sorts of work you're doing, but it's about the ubiquitous theme that AI has become. I mean, everyone's talking about it. How do you, I mean, what's your take on the way AI is going to influence the kind of investment world over the next few years? I mean, what's your take on that? How do you think that's going to shake down?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of tools out there at the moment where you can set um, parameters on the types of deals that you're looking for, the types of founders that you want to meet. So I think from a deal sourcing standpoint, it's certainly making that easier and way less time consuming. I think there's models being built by AI that enable you to secure investment. I'm going to have a coughing fit. Excuse me.
Okay.
Um, so I think just making it easier is
Right.
the key. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, I'm a great believer if you want people to do things, make it easier for them. And we need more entrepreneurs, we need more investors, we need more businesses. I mean, we need more growth. Although the government don't seem to have lost track of that at the moment, but that's something that we need certainly in the UK. Fiona, thank you for taking a bit of time out to come and talk to us about what you're doing.
Thank
Always
you.
fascinating. I mean, we've spoken on a number of occasions in the past, and it's always fascinating. So I really
My
appreciate you
pleasure.
taking the time to come and have a chat, and hopefully we will speak again soon.
Indeed. Thanks so much.
Cheers then. Bye bye.
Bye.